So where I'm standing now is this deep, great unknown. I have no idea who I'm going to be. I'm not really sure who I am now. And not that I will probably never really know for sure. And I think that's part of the beauty. But I'm not drowning in the mist anymore. I'm allowing the mist to be here, and sometimes it drifts away and things become a bit more clear. And I feel that pregnant potential of who I am and who I keep becoming. But yeah, I'm feeling lighter, more able to belong in myself, but still very much, this great unknown, like I have no idea. And now I feel okay with that.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Going Out Looking In, the podcast where we're exploring the human experience through conscious conversations. My name is Maxi, I'm your host, and today I'm inviting you into the world of my guest, of my friend, of yoga teacher and facilitator of sacred spaces, Maria Branco. I met Maria only a couple of months ago, which feels like so much longer, actually. I feel like we've known each other for so long. In her own studio, where I feel like the first class was a meditation class, and the second one was a sound bath. That's where we met initially. And I was struck from the moment that I met Maria by her way of holding space, how she does it with as much sincerity and integrity and honesty and vulnerability. And among the thousands and thousands and thousands of teachers and facilitators, it made her really stand out. I felt immediately that she is walking the talk, that she is embodying and not just talking, that she is really practicing what she's preaching, and that she's an example of someone who is really leading with vulnerability, which is also a thing that we do at Sacred Sons very often. That opens up the portal and the door for so many of us to step through ourselves to be vulnerable. And as somebody who holds a space, to be able to navigate the balance of like putting yourself out there as a facilitator and showing yourself vulnerable, and at the same time holding space for others and being sort of like the rock in the room and really be like sort of solid. I feel like that balance is a beautiful dance that not many people can actually really hold both of those energies, all at the same time, and Maria can. And that's how I experienced her. That made her stand out. And then so I decided to have her on. We met at her beautiful studio, The Art of Presence, in Bavaria, right next to where I live. And yeah, it's a very deep, honest, intimate conversation around her journey. And this is the topic of the podcast. I don't want to just speak about a subject again and again and yoga for the 500th time. It's just like, all right, we got that now. I want to explore the personal stories. That what is exactly what we did in this conversation with Maria. We're speaking about her journey, her upbringing in China, actually, her move into Portugal, then her move to Germany, the start of her business, how she found her voice, her power, and how she overcame also, and she's speaking about this extensively, how she made the shift from being a very shy and introverted person back in the day to more and more stepping into her power, taking the leap of faith of opening her own studio. It's really like the phoenix rising from the ashes sort of situation, and it's really inspiring. And I'm glad to have, with this podcast again and again, have the opportunity to shine the light and for other people just like Maria. And so keeping this short and sweet, this will be a deep dive into the world of a human that I truly cherish in my life, and I am just very much looking forward to hear what it does for you. So with that being said, I wish you beautiful insights with this episode. Myself, my guest, Maria Branco. Yeah, so just arriving in space. Thank you so much for being here and doing this with me. I feel great gratitude for being in your space and how this came to be. Feels very aligned, very effortless, very, supposed to be. So, and effortless is a good word as well. It feels like the next logical step for me to really deepen the connections that so naturally came into my life since I moved here. And it's funny because I don't feel like we only know each other for a couple of weeks, months, also with Toby as well. So it feels very good, very aligned to be sitting here today. And I'm just very curious to see what's arising between us. Also, it feels very good to be here as I was here not too long ago for the sound bath, prior to that for a meditation, and just to get acquainted with the energies in the room and the space in general. So all of that contributes just to me sitting here in, considering all of the equipment and all of the stuff that happened. I'm sitting here with tranquility and serenity and peace of mind and heart and soul, and that's my check-in, I would say, for this episode, for this conversation. As I've mentioned before, I always like to open up the space, offer some words, and just a little guidance into the space that we co-create. So also for the listeners, wherever you're listening, if that's the car, if it's doing the laundry, if you're laying in bed with your headphones on, if you're taking a walk, if you're commuting to work, whatever it is, just inviting you to drop into the space where you're at, and this is within your own judgment of responsibility. If you're driving, don't close your eyes, all right? So don't do that.
Small details.
Exactly. But just invite us to drop into the physical form, into the body. If something that you like to do, you can close your eyes. You could put your feet on the ground. I always like that, and just be for a second. Just be with what is. And the beauty of the human experience is that there's always something happening. It's never nothing happening, right? So there might be sounds. There might be voices. There might be thoughts arising. Feelings in the body. And that's the thing, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being pure awareness, consciousness, God, 1 being just pure matter, as humans, we're somewhere in between. So we are matter, right? There is a body, sensations, and awareness of all of those things, of God, it's within us. And to just like get acquainted with both of those truths, that's the nectar. That's the sweetness of the human experience. So, with all of that being said, just a brief moment to become aware of the breathing, soft, beautiful breathing. Air coming in and out of your lungs without your active doing. Isn't that fascinating? Just coming in and go, like just does its thing. Force of life entering you, leaving you again. And with that, just offering some words here. Dear beautiful creation on this day, please facilitate a loving connection between Maria and myself. Guide our tongues so we can speak what needs to be said, so we can hear what needs to be heard, we can feel what needs to be felt. May we come from a place of openness, curiosity, authenticity, integrity, respect, ultimately love. May we move well, knowing that the ancestors are present here with us today. Those who walked before us, those who will come after us. Truly, we're never alone. We realize that today. We're grateful for the soil we're standing on, for the air in our lungs, for the water that we drink, for the food, the nectar of life that's nourishing us every day. With that, we dive into this conversation, and we thank you for all the gifts you have presented us with. And with that, beautiful. We enter. Wow. That was a little bit longer than usual. It felt good. So on this day, Maria, and in your space, what's alive right now for you?
That's a great question. First of all, thank you for the beautiful prayer. And I think it was really the perfect way to start. And that's really alive in me right now, this sense of deep gratitude for the prayer that came through you, the energy that you cultivated in this space just by saying it out loud, for the invitation. So there's deep, deep gratitude, excitement, little nervousness, I won't lie. Little nervousness, yeah. And just a lot of love, a lot of gratitude, very, very heart opening. And that's what's alive with me right now. And we had a few words before recording, right? And that meant a lot to me, that you want to create a safe space, and that it has to feel authentic, and we both have no idea where this is gonna go towards, and that was really helpful somehow to hear that and to have that check-in, and it already feels, it feels like we've opened like a magical circle, like we've cast a circle, where magic can unfold, and we will see. Yeah, we will see. So there's a lot of excitement for that journey. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, feel the same way. Like I said, it's, and there will be a separate intro where I'll probably say something along those lines and speak about how I got to know you and what my intention was with like bringing you on. And the thing is, like, sitting here and experiencing you in your work and in your power, is something that really stood out to me. Like, I had now 65, 70 conversations on the podcast, a couple of more actually that didn't make the recording, and many other meetings with people who work in the space of wellness and well-being and health and spirituality and yoga and whatnot. And I just wanted to also tell you that I just found that and also within the space we're in right now, that is just like a certain like sincerity and depth to what it is you're doing and offering. And that was really something that got me curious about like exploring that more with you, because I feel like the wisdom, or not the wisdom is more embodied, but like the knowledge around so many of these teachings, they're available, right? We can read this, we can hear this, right? So basically the portal, we just need a phone basically, and then we got like we got everything, all the knowledge available to us. And then there is the layer of like embodiment and really sort of like living that and walking the talk. And that's what I found like with you, like very interesting and sort of like outstanding also from my perception, because I really feel like that you have read all of this and blah blah blah, but you are living from that place also, and you can really go into that knowledge when you're like teaching here. So that being said, how do you feel about like being in this space? Like, this is your space, like you made this happen, like it's a physical thing, like so now we are here protected from the elements by the space. It has your name there, like the brand you're standing for, like people are coming and going here. Like how is that for you?
That's a great question. And thank you also for what you shared before. We'll get there, because that's a big one. But it feels, to be honest, it feels kind of surreal. Very often it feels surreal. So I bow in deep gratitude to all the circumstances that led to this happening. It was quite spontaneous, actually. It was not planned at all that I would open my own space so soon, although it was definitely a seed that had been planted at some point some while ago, but it was kind of dormant. It was like, I really thought it was going to be in 20 or maybe even 30 years. And so a part of it feels surreal, but in a beautiful way, just like, do I have to pinch myself? Is this really happening? And at the same time, it also feels just, like an absolute privilege and blessing, to not only to have my own physical space that I can take care of and tend to in the way that feels right for me, but most of all, the people that trust me, that come and that come back, or that don't come back, which is also totally fine. But just this, I have deep reverence for that, that people would actually choose to come here and co-create with me. And because it's always a co-creation, right? It's always playing with energy in a beautiful way, right? I'm just holding the energy and inviting, and everybody else then decides how much they want to dive into it with their own energy, right? So it's always a play. But yeah, I have a lot of reverence, a lot of awe, a lot of respect. And it also feels like a big responsibility somehow to tend to such a place that I will never guarantee that it's a safe space. I can do my best, but we can never guarantee this, right? And I try to keep that humble thought in mind, that I show up in the best way I can for myself, for you, for all of us. But I can't guarantee that it's safe, right? Because things can happen, right? And so I'm just in awe, really, that somehow, in some way, it's still aligned and flowing and safe. And yeah, I don't take it for granted that we can be here today in this space. And it's a very long answer to a seemingly simple question, but yeah, I feel there's many things that I feel when I think about this space and what it means to me and what it has meant to others as well. And yeah, it's ever evolving. But yeah, a lot of awe.
Right.
Yeah.
How would you say does it differ from an online space that you were holding in the past or still holding? How is this different now, this being like a physical space?
It's very different. Although when I was teaching online, I was amazed at how suddenly physical space and distance did not seem to matter at all. I was shocked, and like in a Zoom class or a session, that I could feel each person as though they would have been in the room with me in a physical space. So online can be very deep and very special, but it is different. There's just something about tending, like our ancestors that did. They were rooted, they tended to the land, and this was their sense of belonging and deep spirituality, right? Their connection to a particular place or places. And so that's the biggest difference for me, having such a physical space where I'm rooted in and tending to, not just physically by vacuuming and cleaning and swiping the dust and putting some nice scent, but also energetically tending to it. That's the biggest difference. It feels very sacred for me personally. And I don't think you can see it on the camera, but I have like a tiny little altar, which is behind me, and it's always behind me. Usually when I teach or hold space, I'm standing kind of where I am now, just a bit further behind, and I always have that candle behind me as a support. So it really, you can do this, of course, in an online space, absolutely, but it's different because I'm receiving others in the space that I'm tending to, right? So I do it for myself, but I also do it for them. And it's hard to put into words, but it is a big responsibility, right? Because I'm inviting others into this cocoon. And it also feels very ancient, very old. This idea of tending to something sacred for yourself and the community and being of service. And that in that sense, it feels very different from an online space. Right. Although you would be able to a certain extent to do it online as well, but it's different.
Yeah, it's actually super interesting because with the podcast, that was my first sort of like, I made my first couple of baby steps into the field of having like conversations, recording them, and having that both in person and then online. And I noticed like significant differences there, and actually different than I thought. in the beginning, like, because initially I thought like nothing beats in-person conversations, right? So nothing. So it's just like online. It's never going to be the same. However, I found, and it also is an extension and down the line to the men's groups, for example, because I'm holding them online and offline, so in person. And I found certain pieces for me to be, at first, it's an evolution, it's a process, but I find it somewhat easier in the beginning, especially to do it online, because everybody is in their own space.
Yes.
And
so are you.
Yeah, and so am I.
Private space.
And it's pretty intense. Like this, it can be pretty intense. And there's other factors than the energies present that, you know, we have to sort of like take in, and our nervous system has to regulate with the online space and with my desk, no matter who I'm speaking to, really. In that very moment, it doesn't make a difference, at least from the appearance of it. Like I'm tuned in a little bit more quicker than when, I don't know, like I told you about it, like when I'm traveling somewhere and I'm entering, I don't know, like a big house, and I'm entering a personal space of them, and I'm seeing, I don't know, some whatever achievements that they put on the wall or whatever it may be, or like a car that they're driving and stuff. All of that stuff like is sort of contributing to an image, right, of that person and to the energy that the place is like loaded with. And I'm entering that, and that's influencing me, then sort of like pressing on record and having to come up with something, right? So I found that just like for my very personal journey, like a very interesting thing that I don't know, I reflected upon, and I was like, yeah, it's really not black and white and one is better than the other. It's just really different, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's different. Both have pros and cons, and I think the online thing, you don't have to leave your house if you don't want to, right? You can practice in your own cocoon, and as soon as it's done, you can directly go to bed or do whatever it is that you need to do to integrate or to rest, right? So there's very beautiful sense of safety there as well. The fact that you don't have to leave somewhere to go somewhere to attend a men's circle or a yoga class or whatever it is, right? And yeah, both have pros and cons. And there is I'm glad you mentioned, you know, going into someone else's house, so when you're traveling to record an episode, because that used to be my life, or I believe the life of many space holders or yoga teachers in particular, you know, going from studio to studio, from setting to setting to teach. And I used to teach in many different places, but suddenly having my own space, I guess that's why I had to mention ancestors and something ancient, because it feels very mothering of me that, no, this is my space. I will endow it with the energy that I want so that people can be okay when they come here. This tending, right? And that's another level. Yeah, that's different. And also what I had to think, you know, online, it can really be so beautiful, right? So I'm not discrediting. Both have pros and cons. But in person, there's just conversation flows a bit more easily, I feel, because online, you know, suddenly everyone has their microphone muted so that they can hear you for a moment, or it's like you kind of have to take turns. It's a bit more rigid in a way, do you know what I mean? And if it's not, then it's chaos, and like, do you know what I mean? And Zoom kind of, if there's too many people speaking at the same time, it filters the voices that you hear, so you won't hear everybody, right? So there's human interaction can be a little bit more fluid when it's not online. And I think I also feel that the people who have joined me online or in my space, when they come to my space, it's more it's a bit more clear that I'm just a human as they are. Do you know what I mean? It's like, that's a big point for me. No matter what I do, I am just a human. But somehow when it's live, it's like a little less intimidating in a way. In some ways, I don't know if that makes sense, but like it's more, people can read your energy and your presence, and you can read theirs and feel into each other, and conversation can just flow more organically, and yeah, and then you can get to it's different. It's different. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a couple of people that come to mind who I hold in with great reverence, who I feel like have great gifts to offer the world, in terms of healing and other modalities, and to step in some level of leadership, in some level of offering services. They're very hesitant. And we're speaking in like baby steps here, just like to, I don't know, see themselves as someone who has to offer something, then to actually do it, then to maybe do it online, to then having a dedicated space to do that. Long journey. And I feel like we are both. I feel like we're both in a we're like in an equinox, in a phoenix rising sort of dynamic right now, where we are both really, I guess, expanding and coming out more and expanding and taking up more space. And so I would be curious to just open up the space and have you share whatever you want to share, however long, however short, whatever feels right and good for you right now, on that journey from like starting out as, I don't know, yeah, you tell me where you started off, and how then, you know, those steps that led to you today sitting here. Because like I said, it's a big deal. Like, you know, you're holding space for not only yourself but for other people. So, you know, also the intention of like how did you find that confidence, that clarity? Is like, yeah, all right, I got something to share here, and I'm feeling good about it. It's, you know, and I'm initiating that, because something like this doesn't drop from the sky. Like, you have to put things into motion, right? It's like a process, certainly with hurdles and obstacles you have to overcome. So just want to open up the space here and have you share a little bit about that.
That's a great seed that you're planting in our conversation, and also what you said just earlier, that it's some of the people or even space holders that you respect the most, for whatever reason, it wasn't necessarily easy for them to step into that role. And I'm not saying that you should be plagued by self-doubt, like oftentimes I am, right? I don't think it has to be self-destructive in that sense, but humility is never a bad thing. And I think, as uncomfortable as it is, questioning ourselves, especially in such a role, is key. Mm-hmm. But not in the way that would be self-destructive, right? And what is the balance? I don't know. It's something that you'll have to experience for yourself. And that was actually the same for me, stepping out into the world, because you are putting yourself out there, right? You are taking the responsibility as of teacher or space holder or guide or whatever you want to call it, right? And it's been a long journey, but if you ask me how I started off, I will have to go back to my childhood. I know a lot of people talk about like spiritual awakening, or when was the big aha moment,
when did
eureka?
the penny drop, yeah.
Yeah, like the big aha moment, and I don't think I've had one. I'll reframe this. And there can definitely be aha moments for sure, and they are really great. But I think I think I can safely say, and I mean this in all humility, that I think I've been very blessed and very privileged in this lifetime, in many ways. And one of the ways is that already as a kid, my sense of spiritual or sacredness, or what, there's not quite a word for it, but my sense of I think you're getting it, was always there. It was never not part of my experience. So it wasn't like I woke up one day and oh wow. It was always there, very much connected to nature and other animals, and also, if you believe in those things, spirits or nature spirits, or that maybe spirit can be a word to mean, that can mean consciousness everywhere, not just here, but also here and here, and right, and maybe a bit animistic, shamanic in that sense, like many of our ancestors were. But that was always part of my experience as a child, so I was very sensitive and very interested in these topics as well. And even though I never had answers or anything, there was just always this unshakable feeling of not necessarily ideas or beliefs, but just this feeling, embodied feeling that there is something inherently magic to life, earthly life, not just far away out there. So I think I've been very blessed to have had that experience since as far as I can remember, and that's eventually what led me to, get into certain topics like yoga, meditation, and esotericism, or, and so that's kind of how it started for me. I always had that need to be able to integrate the magic that I felt and perceived into my daily life, or it was part of my daily life, but into my role in society. I wanted to be able to have a job that was fun and fulfilling and beautiful and challenging, and that felt also aligned with this visceral experience that I've always had, that there is sacredness in everything. And I did not plan at all to become a yoga teacher, but that was the first portal, so to say. Or maybe the first one was that I decided to study psychology. So there was a sense of, I want to be able to help people. I don't really like saying that, but let's, for the sake of, being easier to understand, let's say it like that, I wanted to be able to have a role to contribute, to be of service, to others, and also myself, right? It's never separate. So that was the first thing, and then I started to get into yoga. And there was one day actually when it was actually in Germany. I was doing an exchange semester in Hamburg, and I went to a yoga class that I always used to go to. I think it was a Thursday evening or something. But the usual teacher wasn't there. It was a sub, lovely lady, a human, that's how I like it. And we can dive into that one in a little bit. But there she came, and I think I just didn't expect anything, which is always a good place to start. And suddenly I was just... I remember at some point something unlocked in me in that class, and my heart was just so open in such a way that I hadn't felt in a while. I was so deeply touched, and I remember leaving that class. It was already getting dark, and it was, I think, end of spring, beginning of summer. And in Hamburg, a little bit like here, you can get some thunderstorms as well, which I love. And so on the way home, I used to just walk home 20 minutes around. I was just so happy. I was dancing on the street, and I've always been such a shy person, but I just didn't care. I was pretty high. You can call it that. And then, you know, the rain starts pouring, and I just don't give a shit. And I just and there was just something so freeing about that. And then I'm just soaked, and the thunder starts roaring, and at some point I'm like, okay, let's just run. And I'm just running and laughing and dancing and just making my way home, you know. And it was one of the most heart-opening moments of my life, actually. And that was the moment I remember getting home, turning off all the lights and just going to bed to see the lightning and to hear the thunder and the rain. And then I just fell asleep. And I just remember thinking, wow, this woman, sure, I took the step to dive into it, but this woman, she invited us. She gave us the permission to explore something, and then it was up to me to explore it or not. But the fact that she invited it made me then take that and discover this and have this experience. And that's what, yeah, that was when I first ever considered, oh, wow, maybe I would love to be able to invite people to dive into their experience of being alive. Then the rest is up to them how they do it. But that was the first moment that I was like, yeah, maybe I would love to be a yoga teacher. Maybe I would, yeah, if I can open the space so that people can by themselves experience something akin to opening their heart or coming back into the present moment, then I would love to learn how to do that and be supportive of those moments for others. So that was very unexpected, very spontaneous, but that's how it came to be through yoga first. Yeah.
What did this woman? What did she do? Like, what exactly did she? Was it? Can you describe the feeling a little bit? Like, was it? Yeah, can you describe that a little bit? Like, what it was that she was sparking in you?
I think the main thing, it's always a co-creation, right? And I really mean this. Like, as a yoga teacher or a space holder, I'm literally just offering the space and the invitation and the safety without guaranteeing it, but offering the safety and the compassion that you then could explore yourself. And that's what she did. She just felt really familiar and safe and loving. So she didn't do any crazy spells. She didn't say anything complicated. She was just very kind, just very human, very kind, very safe. And then I felt ready. Part of myself somehow felt ready in that moment to dive into that. So there was nothing forceful or pushy from her. It was just, the space is open, and I'm here with compassion, and you can dive in with me if you want. And that's exactly how it felt.
And dive into what?
That's the thing. Into whatever arises. So there's no agenda, or there shouldn't be. Otherwise, you're not a space holder.
And what did you dive into?
And what I dove into was really, I dove into I feel it in my body now that we're talking about it. I feel this tingling, this almost effervescent, you know, when water is kind of like sparkly, like this warmth. I dove into this deep joy of just being alive, as it was. You know, nothing fancy. I was soaked from the rain. Like, there's nothing fancy about that, right? Or like transcendental, but somehow it was just the most beautiful thing. So it's hard to put it into words, but yeah, I dove into the joy of being alive as a human in that moment, and the potential for every moment to have that blossoming magic in it as well. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's yeah.
I feel like the most powerful truths are always the simplest ones, and there's a big difference between something being simple and easy, right?
Yeah.
So
Totally.
be present. All right. Yeah, I try. Or as Yoda would say, right? Do not try. But yeah, for sure. And it was your experience. It doesn't even have to make sense to anyone else other than you.
Totally. And it could have been that nobody else enjoyed the class.
Exactly.
But I was just so into it.
Which is also such a good reminder for people, like when you think about this woman now, the effect that she had on you, even if she was just a sub.
Yeah.
Potentially changed some course of your life to a certain degree.
Completely.
And so, the fact that she decided that morning to get out of bed and do this, basically it's just me articulating that you just never know what your light that you bring to the world, what the effect of that is to other people. You never know. And that's why I always or not always, actually, it's a process where I feel like you're in a similar state where I want to get more into that, speaking my truth comes with potentially like a big reward, not for me, but maybe for someone else. And if it's not like the apparent reward in the sense of like something positive, even if it triggers someone, there's a gift in that as well. And so my only responsibility is like speak the truth, like do the thing, get up, show myself, like, all right, come on, like what are we here for ultimately? I just wanted to offer that as well.
Absolutely.
You grew up in Portugal, right?
Not completely.
Not completely. All right. Where else?
I was born in China, and I don't know if you knew this about me. Did we ever talk about it?
Now that you mention it, I think you dropped that once, and potentially it sounded so far from what I could imagine that I forgot it again. I don't know.
I was born in China, and I was there until I was almost 6. And I have crazy childhood memories. Like I remember everything from 1.5 years old to now. Interesting fact about me.
Oh wow!
So it played a big part in my life, and the memories and the impressions, and also why I feel like I was very early drawn to Eastern philosophies and spiritual practices, because I always felt that connection to the Far East, and I missed it right when then we moved to Portugal. So when I was almost 6, we moved to Portugal. So I've lived mostly in Portugal, let's put it this way. That's the easy answer.
So how's growing up in China, or like being born there, and the extensive memories that you have?
It was crazy because it felt like home to me. So I didn't think much about it. I imagine that maybe also for you, the place that you grew up in, if it was one particular place, especially that first place, that you don't really think about it. You just, it's your home, right?
Where in China was it?
It's in the very south, Macau. It used to be a Portuguese colony. So there's a big Portuguese community there.
Not
still.
From a James Bond movie where he goes into a casino. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's in Skyfall or something.
It could be, yeah. And it's very close to Hong Kong.
Yep.
Did they not film some parts of that movie in Hong Kong or something?
Yep.
Maybe.
Yep. No. Like, there is a skyscraper scene and a fight in a skyscraper and a chase that's filmed in Hong Kong, and then there's the Macau casino thing where he goes on these ancient like boats.
Yeah.
And he's driving through the canals.
All right.
On the way to the casino. It looks crazy. Like it looks with these wooden houses with the ceiling, you know, with the and then there's the how do you even say that in English? The pavillon lights, like the out of the thin paper, where the thin paper is wrapped around the candles, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So that's where I grew up.
The
first 6 years of my life, right? But I didn't think much about it because it just felt familiar, you know, and it just felt like home. But then I started thinking about it a lot when I left.
Interesting.
That's the thing. So going through that sense of loss, feeling it was this interesting experience because my family is Portuguese, and that is my mother tongue. You know, moving to Portugal for my parents felt like coming back home, but for me and my sister was, what is this place? I've been here a couple times in the summer, but what is this really? You know, it was not coming back home. It was coming to a completely different place altogether, and then feeling very much like an outsider. So then, so I think that played a huge part in my life, actually, because I, being confronted with that and that sense of loss, and that all my friends stayed in China, and for 7 years we didn't go back. So from 5 to 12, right? That's a long time when you're growing up. So Macau became this refuge for me in my mind, my true home, where I feel like I used to belong, but now I don't belong in Portugal, and it felt kind of weird to be there. So there was always a part of me kind of like, maybe, very melancholic, and kind of dealing with the sense of loss and not really knowing where to belong, but really craving to belong, as any human does. This longing, right, is a very human thing. And that was very present in me very early because of that move. It's literally moving from one side of the world to the other, right? It could not have been more different. So that played a huge, had a huge influence in my life, because I've always been someone with deep longing to belong wherever that may be, right? Maybe in the Arctic, maybe in China, maybe in Portugal, maybe in the ocean, maybe in different world, right? I always had this, I don't know if that makes sense, but I always, because of going through that sense of loss, I was not afraid of letting go of my safe surroundings to try and explore other avenues of life, other countries, other beliefs and philosophies and ideas. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that played a huge part in my life, a huge role in my life. And then it was a shock when I was 12. We went back to Macau to visit, and I couldn't recognize it because it's completely different. The city totally changed. It became like the Las Vegas of the East. And it used to have only one casino, and now it has billions. So that was a shock, because the home that I thought I had, that sanctuary in my mind, no longer was. And so, it's interesting that you asked, where I grew up. Our early stories, they shape us, not completely, but a lot. And so that seeking and the, I don't belong there anymore. I don't really recognize it as I thought I would. This homecoming feeling did not happen. But where I am, I'm also not quite at peace. So where should I go next? What should I explore next? Or what parts of me should I explore next and find belonging in, right? That was always a huge thing in my life for me.
What's home for you?
And the great conclusion to what I started saying is that, as cliche as it may sound, Like in this yoga class in Hamburg, this feeling of belonging in the present moment. And it doesn't matter the comings and goings, if they are good or pleasant or unpleasant, if you are not necessarily around the best people or in the most ideal place, but this connection to yourself and to your present reality with acceptance and somewhat reverence to it. That is home for me. Those moments when you arrive in your heart, and it doesn't always happen, and that's why we do the practices that we do, and that's why we feed the passions that we have, because suddenly there's this, you're in the present moment. These things support your ability to be in the present moment as it is, with this acceptance. And there's also there's a peace that comes with that, a peace and also joy, even if it's not joyful, what's happening, but that is home to me. That is home to me.
It's interesting, isn't it? No, there's no... Yeah, it's a very multidimensional thing, I feel like. Because in everything that you said, there was no place in it. There was no person in it. It's like what is it? It's a state of being. It's a feeling, right?
It's hard to describe because it's also not just a feeling, right? Because it's
Yeah, I understand.
It's like a very full experience, but also very empty, because maybe the present moment has grief and it has anger, and it's not peaceful. But if I can accept it and if I can reach that part of myself that can hold it, then no matter the turmoil, and I still feel it, so I'm not dissociating from it, right? But I'm holding it, and at the same time there is peace with it. And it doesn't always happen, as I mentioned, but yeah, you're right. It's true. Maybe I'm a little shocked that I didn't mention anyone or any place, and maybe it is selfish in a way of not mentioning it. But
I don't think so. I think it's layers. I think it's layers and how you want to frame a question and how you answer it. Like, of course, there is a physical place that I connect to the word home as well. For sure, there is. In fact, for me, it's multiple places. Like, it can change. And then there's people who really make me feel so... What is it? They make me feel sort of like the intention of this podcast to some degree. And for that matter, for all spaces I'm creating, for me to be, just be with as little resistance to whatever arises, basically. And it makes me feel comfortable to the degree that also I can be comfortable with the resistance, with the being uncomfortableness,
Yeah.
So with everything that's just there, basically.
With what's arising.
Exactly.
And I love that you mention that some people make you feel this way, or their presence in itself, there's permission in the connection that you have, so that you can de-armor kind of and just be as you are. And I love that you mentioned that, because that's something that I realized a bit later in life, because I used to be, I'm a proper introvert and I used to be really shy and really socially anxious. I used to not be able to really talk to people. or to go to the supermarket alone when I was 16 because I had to talk to the person at the casa at the checkout. I was that.
Right.
And sometimes it comes up. I'm not gonna lie. And I think that's part of the reason why in my life this sense of home, I always felt like an alien. I think all of us to some degree feel like an alien. But I really felt like an alien, and that's what we all say. But it was very hard for me to belong in connection with others. When I was younger especially, I felt like I could never be truly myself in the presence of others. And that's something that I finally had the blessing to experience and to understand and to believe in later in life. That when you mentioned just now that some people make you feel like you can totally be yourself with all that encompasses and with all of that means, good and not so great. And I had to think that sometimes all it takes is a conversation with a true friend or a true soul connection. And in that conversation, I feel at home. And I think that's something so beautiful and so deep also, because there's this idea and that especially nowadays with, consumer spirituality and hyper individualism, that you are completely responsible for everything and you have to figure it all out alone and heal all parts of yourself alone, and this kind of conversation. And that's bullshit. A little what we were talking about earlier before the podcast, having these paradoxes. Yes, it is incredibly lonely, existentially lonely to be a human, because you are alone. No one's going to do it for you. And at the same time, we are intrinsically collective beings, and there's things you can only heal in relationship, because perhaps they were wounded in relationship. Do you know what I mean? And there's things like, I've had times when maybe I just felt really down and like in my own loop, and not really being able to sit with that, or not really seeing the light at the end of the tunnel or the light in the darkness, But then suddenly I had just a very human conversation with my best friend, and it was the most spiritual thing I could have ever done. And it was just the most humbling, beautiful, sacred, healing, difficult, and heart-opening at the same time thing that I could have ever done. So I think some conversations are also home in a way. If that makes sense.
Yeah, makes total sense.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought it up, that some people, in your life, that there's this feeling of being at home in yourself, in the world, in the never-ending present moment, and how that can be connected to some people as well. That's very true.
Where do you stand today, right now, with belonging?
You ask very good questions, Maxi. I really have to think, to feel, and I take my time to answer.
Take all the time.
That is really a great question. I moved to Germany in the last 3 years ago, right? So there's also this process of belonging in a physical place, that is different from the ones I grew up in. And there's also the level of belonging that we talked about in myself. And 5 years ago, you could say I had a deep and very difficult initiation. I call it an initiation because for a long time I almost saw it as a curse, where my life took a turn in such a way that I never imagined, and that I had deep grief and disappointment and hurt with particular people in my life. And I entered a deep crisis, existential crisis also, you know. And then the pandemic hit, and that was also not so easy. I feel like it just kind of amplified that deep initiation that happened in the middle of 2019. And then suddenly it was 2020, and I think, you know, we know what that was. And so for 5 years now, let's say 4 years, because this past year I've been able to tap into acceptance and seeing the beauty of it. But for 4 years I was really battling the person I was becoming, or the not being able to recognize myself, or not really feeling like myself. It's a very strange feeling, because this unshakable feeling of belonging and connection that I had to magic, to the present moment, suddenly was not there. And that's kind of, I had a deep spiritual and personal crisis starting 5 years ago. And in the past couple months, I feel like physically I'm finally arriving here post-pandemic, because I moved here during the pandemic. So on that physical level, connected to a place and to people, I feel like I'm finally arriving and belonging more and more, also with my space, right? It wasn't just from day one that this is my space, you know, it took time. And now in the last couple months, last 6 months, 8 months, I've been going into a beautiful process of acceptance, and also, I am not at all the person I thought I would be, but I guess I was never meant to, right? And as cliche as that might sound, I had a lot of grief for the things that I lost, and the idea that I lost of who I thought I would be with the people who I thought I would be with, and the life and all these things. And so it's really great that you asked that question, because if you had asked me 2 years ago, I would have been way too overwhelmed to answer. But since the last 6 to 8 months, I'm finally, step by step, finding my own path and my own way to belong in myself again. And so where I'm standing now is this deep, great unknown. I have no idea who I'm going to be. I'm not really sure who I am now. And not that I will probably never really know for sure. And I think that's part of the beauty. But I'm not drowning in the mist anymore. I'm allowing the mist to be here, and sometimes it drifts away and things become a bit more clear. And I feel that pregnant potential of who I am and who I keep becoming. But I'm feeling lighter, more able to belong in myself, but still very much, this great unknown, like I have no idea. And now I feel okay with that. So an initiation that was brought about 5 years ago, that I'm suddenly finally coming to compassionate terms with, and that is finally making sense, but I still have no idea where it's going to lead. But it's finally, I finally can breathe into it. And so I've been able to belong a bit more in that unknown. So I think unknown is where I belong at the moment, Long story short. But it's an unknown that has enough space for me to breathe in at the moment, Yeah, it's hard to cram it all into a podcast, into an episode, right? Because we could talk for 20 years and I could share all the details.
I mean, that's the beauty of doing this. I mean, it's funny for me as well. Like, with every question, with every pause, or no pause, or at the end of the day, when looking at a conversation, it is exactly that which it needed to be, because obviously it is made up of the parts that made it this way. So every single interaction that ever happened between us, in fact, all of our lives led to this moment right here, right
Yes.
now.
Everything.
If you got up 1 minute, even 1 second later or earlier this morning, this day would have shaped up very differently. And so it did for me. So there is such a great mystery in everything that we do. So much unknown, so many things that... And the only resistance to it, I feel, is the mind and thoughts trying to bring order into the chaos that we talked about earlier as well.
Trying to grasp it and control it and predict it, right?
And as soon as you let go of that, like as soon as I let go of that, in this role here on the podcast, always the best conversations come out. Best. Whatever the fuck that is. But
I like that.
Whatever I feel is really resonating with also me, and yeah.
I love what you said. Can I piggyback on something that you said, about the unknown and that we have no idea? And there's something I want to share with you that I always felt it, but I was never able to put it into words until there's a man called Philip Carr-Gomm, and he's a druid, and has been crucial in the neo-paganism, druidry, ancient spiritual practices of Europe, and in particular the British Isles. He's been huge in that movement, and he's also a psychologist, and he's so great, and I've listened to him since I was 12.
Oh, wow.
So it was always very present in my life, that kind of stuff, not because of my family, but just my own inner search. And last year, I finally saw him for the first time at a festival, and he was speaking, and he said something that I thought was brilliant, because we always focus on enlightenment, blah, blah, blah. But what about endarkenment? The fact that you will always be in the dark about most of it, if we're being honest, right? And that part of enlightenment is also this accepting of the darkness and this endarkenment of not being aware. There's a funny meme of like there's a graph and there's a tiny slice of like shit, and then the rest is like shit you don't even know that you don't even know, and it's and this sense of endarkenment, knowing or being aware that you will never know, that you will never quite understand, but that's the beauty of it, and that's what also brings the meaning and the awe to the knowing, to the moments and the places when suddenly, unexpectedly, the light shows up, and you can only perceive the light when there's the contrast, right? The darkness. If you're in a cave, you will be able to see a light that stands out because everywhere around it is dark. So unknown is a great teacher. One of the biggest teachers and most present teachers in our lives. Endarkenment, unknown.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Just wanted to,
I guess,
to put it out there.
It speaks a lot about someone. I think it says a lot about someone and how they act and react in the world when being faced with the unknown. No judgment. I think it's very interesting, simply put. It's just very interesting how we humans deal with the unknown, with insecurity, whatever it is, how it's being used by people in power to take advantage of those who completely drowned in, because they are longing for connection, they are longing for direction, they are longing for purpose, safety. And then if there's people offering that with great clarity and confidence, all right, I follow this person, seem to know what they're doing. And so I think it just speaks a lot, like it speaks volumes on individuals who can live from that place and embrace that insecurity, ever-changing reality that we're living in, because it's the antidote of what the ego wants, right? Because, and to a certain, also I feel like there's also layers to that, because if you go too broad, if you let that like encapsulate your being too much, I think then you really go crazy, because even the concept of like embracing the unknown, still some level of concept, right? And there's still some level of understanding of yourself that gives you security, even if you name that the godly or the self, the Atman, whatever it is, you know, however spiritual you want to go. Still there is something. Anyway, that's getting a little bit carried away here.
It's good to get carried away. I think that's also the point of.
Yeah, I know. It's very interesting to contemplate these things. So I want to roll back a little bit and get very specific on one more thing. We've touched a little bit about your journey, where you were growing up and the lessons you've learned there, your evolution with belonging, and now maybe some sort of like expansion a little bit more and being a little bit more secure in home, with the space and with what you're doing. I feel that within myself, and I feel that when I'm being with you. Maybe I don't know, in relation to the norm, I might be a little bit sensitive or more sensitive to pick up on certain things, but like I can sense it. Like I can sense that there is also so much like more depth to you than what the eye meets. That's why you're sitting here today, because I wanted to explore this with you. But now the question that comes up with, like, because I'm very curious, like, so how then, like, did you overcome this fear, like, that made you sit here today, offer yoga classes and putting yourself out there? Like, how did you do that?
Right, because going back to the conversation when I mentioned that I used to be so socially anxious, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
because this is the antidote.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're literally speaking in front of people. This is your job.
You know, I was thinking about this recently, and I think I think we are all portals of sensitivity. It's just maybe some of us a little more and others a little less, but also we close ourselves to it because of life experiences. So it's a little bit like a muscle that you can practice and like open up again, right? But I was always very sensitive with people and could feel things a lot, and emotions and energies. And I thought that human interaction was very confusing because people weren't meaning what they were saying, or they.
So it's like
totally
what they say,
totally, or like I had some episodes of bullying at school. You know, maybe a girl really liking me and being my friend, but then in my back something else. And so that kind of like I have these feelings and I feel this way about someone, and I get the vibes that the situation is this, but then in how they speak and how they interact, I'm totally lost. Like what's happening? And I feel like this is a big thing, like withholding space. I'm inviting you to be as you are, which is not an easy thing to do. Not for me, not for anyone. But it's an honest thing to do. And then suddenly it's very clear. You know, like for me, I feel like somehow I feel very safe because I can be myself. And I won't hide it. When people who come here and they ask, how are you? I will say, I've been stressed. I'm struggling today. Like, I won't lie. I won't always say, oh, great, fine. Love and light, you know? Like, no. Hell no. I also won't spill out into them and contaminate their experience, right? Because that's also not my role as a space holder. But there is a degree of authenticity with which I feel very comfortable. And also, when you come in here, I invite you to take the space as you are. And that's not confusing to me, because then you are as you are. Do you know what I mean? Then it's less scary for me to interact with you, because you're not trying to be fake or in some weird ego trip and I'm just not getting it because I'm not in your mind.
And that is because you are facilitating the space?
It's never 100% my responsibility. I would say it's a 50-50. I set the space and then it's up to the person to take it.
Exactly, because they could still walk in.
Yeah. You can still
and do their like ego thing, for example, now, whatever they do.
You can totally do that, but somehow and it has also happened, but somehow I don't know.
Because there's so much. There's so much strength in what you're doing. I feel like there's like a lion behind like metal bars who is just like roaring and ready to like go and set boundaries and speak up and be very clear and precise and like no, this is not what I want, this is what I want, you know. Be very clear with that. And the only like I'm just bringing all of this up because it's resonating so much with me. It's all because I can only see in you what I can see in me.
Exactly.
That's all because it is in me. That's why I can see it in you. And I guess I'm also just very selfishly interested in how to transition from like imposter and like from, you know, doing this. And I feel like also I made progress with this, but you know, now with us sitting here, this is just like, because we need this. Like we need people who stand up for something, because otherwise we fall for anything, right? I really feel like there's so much truth to this saying. And I also ultimately feel like if you're everyone's friend, you're like an enemy to yourself. Like, you know?
I'm gonna write that down. That's amazing. Wow.
It's just like, and that makes people ultimately, I feel, trustworthy as well.
Yeah.
And I'm missing that within myself so much.
Same.
I'm missing it with myself sometimes, where I'm just like feeling like you just smiled or laughed or said yes to something that you truly don't resonate with. And the thing that made me do that, which is like belonging.
When it's attached and dependent on external
it's actually sometimes
things,
it's actually not. It's actually drawing me further away from belonging, because sometimes in a conversation saying, to be honest, like, and respectfully, you don't have to, like, I don't have to be an asshole, just like be respectful, and disagreeing can actually make me belong even more, because people then like realize, all right, well, he's truly seeing something different, like, and he has an opinion, you know?
Absolutely.
And so that's why I feel like this is such it's fucking important, like,
it's everything.
Really important.
Boundaries are everything. And anger, or the energy of, and maybe this is triggering, it would have been for me years ago, right? But the energy of anger, which does not mean rage, it does not mean aggression, but this energy of, let's call it energy, then it's more neutral, but this energy of, I stand here, I take space, this is me, that's everything. Because otherwise you constantly betray yourself and you abandon yourself. And this is the worst thing you could do to yourself. And I feel like I'm still, what do you call it? I'm still a recovering people pleaser, you know? Like, absolutely. And I think a lot of us have this. I also think it's a very particularly female story as well, you know, in women, in this, like it's so prevalent, and I still see it in my life. You know, I hate conflict. If I could, I would run away, and I really try sometimes, you know. But I think 5 years ago, when this life crisis hit, I had to deal with a lot of anger that I avoided my entire life. And suddenly there was a choice. Will I keep betraying myself, or will I and get sick? Because also getting sick physically with migraines because of not expressing that anger that I dealt with since I was 5, right? We're talking about very old stuff. So either a choice between that or owning that energy and taking up the space and stop betraying myself. And this is especially huge, I think, in the spiritual scene, because there's love and light, like we said earlier, you know, like always being nice to everybody. Or one thing is to be nice and another thing is being kind, right? And if you're too nice to everything and everyone and everything is a yes, everything is fine, and oh, no problem, yeah, just walk over me, it's totally fine. It's not fine. It is not fine, right? And someone, I don't know who said this, but you probably heard this, right? Any compassion that does not include yourself is not real compassion. That's just people pleasing, right? That last part I don't think is part of the quote, but it wouldn't be real compassion. And yeah, that's a big one, and it's been something that's been part of this initiation that I've been in the past 5 years that I'm only finally now coming to terms with. And the ways to come to terms with, and the only way to integrate it has been to say no, and to deal with conflict, and to call out certain people that needed to be called out. And this, I feel it even now. It's not comfortable. It's I'm not sure if it will ever be comfortable, right? But maybe that's how it's also meant to be, because that discomfort is also what makes you act, right? It's also what makes you change something. So maybe it's never meant to feel comfortable, but it's in having my own space. Now, coming back to what, you know, the topic that you started, right? When you have your own space that you open to the public, you have to set a lot of boundaries. And I had to learn, because I didn't set boundaries. And sometimes lovely, wonderful people who are really great, they just won't fully respect your space. And they don't mean it consciously, but they're just mirroring your lack of rules, your lack of boundaries. And that kept happening. And it was really life telling me, Maria, you have to set a boundary. You have to say no. You have to say, hey, this is not so great. You have to disagree. You have to. So this has been paramount in learning how to step into this lion that you so kindly see. Thank you. I feel like I'm still, I'm feeling her. I feel her. I feel the Kali more and more, right? I feel this more and more, this aspect of myself. And it's still in early stages, like emerging here and there from the cocoon, but I'm still, it's going to take a while, but it's emerging here and there for sure.
Describe your relationship to your anger right now.
Right now, you know, honestly, it feels very sexy right now. So, and the reason why I say this, it's not easy. It's still not easy. I think I went from not even feeling it at all, and people telling me, oh, I could never imagine you angry, and me taking it as a compliment. Now I shudder when if I would hear that, I would do everything I could to not ever have such an impression again, you know, So I went from that to suddenly really feeling tons of anger and being so overwhelmed in my body and overstimulated by the anger that I would almost collapse, right? And now I'm trying to find the middle, and I've come a long way, so I feel much more at peace with my anger. And one thing that I try to do, I say it, I'm really angry, whether it's to my partner or, someone. Like I try to voice it. So I'm not saying, I'm really angry at you, you were really shitty, you did it. None of that, but I am angry. Full stop. This is what's happening. And that's been helping me a lot to tap into it. And the reason why I said sexy is because I felt really sexy when in recent situations in my life when I really had to step my foot down and say, no, that is not okay. I am really angry. Mm-hmm. I felt really sexy because anger is connected to that as well, right? It's really, so it's not easy. Mm-hmm. And I still, right, when it comes up, I still have to make that choice. Okay, I'm going to own it and I'm going to say it. And it still terrifies me to say I am angry. It still terrifies me to own that reality, right? But it's being owned. Let's put it this way. It's here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's yeah. I also feel like there's actually a wisdom that was passed on to me just recently, where there was so much internal struggles, and that's the beauty of like having now the feminine and masculine both here in the conversation, within both of us, and me working in I would say maybe predominantly masculine spaces with men. Like integrity and authenticity and all of that. There's like it's a very like big values, that are being sort of like promoted in these spaces.
Big words.
Rightfully so. Yeah. All very important, very good. And
I like this. Tell me.
And yeah, it comes with a differentiation. So because again, what we talked about earlier on, life is complex, all right? Life is multifaceted.
As it should.
Complex questions, very easy answers, always, I don't know about that. And everything is just happening in the context of in what it's happening in. So much. Like, if there was a person coming in here now with a knife or a gun trying to harm us, would it be okay to harm this person or to kill this person eventually? I don't know. Before he or she is killing us. Maybe. So, or yes, in my opinion. So the simple rule of like saying, never harm anyone.
Love your neighbor.
Exactly. Love your neighbor, giving the right cheek and all that. All depends on the context. Very extreme example. I'm just saying, all depending on the context.
But it illustrates well the situation.
Exactly.
Sometimes it takes extreme examples to kind of...
And there's people actually, in my opinion, who set way too many boundaries, and they're only full of like, this is what I am, no, and and it's like, okay, like where is the compassion there? Where is the, what are your needs? They're only like this within a ego chamber. Mm-hmm. So like I said, it's all very depending on the context in which we're moving in, and I relate to that very much. And the wisdom that was passed on to me was basically like when speaking your truth, and so much of that was my personal struggle with that. Oh my God, like so much of that was like, I need to actually always now that I'm an embodied masculine, I need to set them up. In order for me to be in integrity, I need to speak my mind and disagree when I disagree.
All
otherwise
the
I'm
time.
out. Otherwise, exactly. Otherwise, I'm out of integrity. Now the thing is, what does that lead to? Like one step further. All right. So because then, if I was just like saying easy rule, always have to speak my truth, always have to set the boundaries, always speak up, and always be honest. Well, what does that lead to? And when I'm thinking of certain people in my life that sometimes I also have to interact with, I don't really get a chance to. We don't. It's not how life works. Some relationships you enter and you can because you want to, and some you just get to enter because you are in a different relationship with them. Anyway, if I was constantly speaking my truth about every single fucking thing, knowing the other person and how they react to it, and I don't want to be, take away something from that, but if I spoke, for example, my truth a couple of times and saw them how they react to it, then there comes a little bit of discernment in there. And that's important, I feel like, does that really make sense? Does it change their opinion? And that was the wisdom. Does it change the opinion? Is there a chance for them to reflect on their opinion if I was to speak my truth now? If it's a no, I don't know. Does it change the situation? Like, is there something to be gained in the situation that we're in if I were to speak to my truth? And can I live? Can I personally live without speaking that out loud? Or am I just saying it to myself? And those kind of like questions, they really help me to discern a little bit more when to speak up and still remain in integrity and be fine with myself, able to sleep at night, look myself in the mirror and say, yeah, it's fine,
That's a big
or
point.
is it just like for me to constantly like, express what comes through regardless of the situation or the person I'm with? Because sometimes it's really hopeless. It is hopeless. It just doesn't make any sense. Yeah. So
that's a big one.
Yeah, it really came up for me.
I'm
and
glad.
It's different for every situation. Yeah.
I will agree with that. And I think, like we talked about earlier before the podcast, I keep referring back to the few conversations that we've had. It would be easy if it were all black or white, but it is not, really not. And what is speaking your truth? Because where is it coming from? Is it coming from me taking responsibility for changing other people's minds and opinions and experiences? Then good luck. Right? Like where is it really coming from? And we should speak up, and we should, step our foot down. Absolutely. And there's also always a time and a place, right? And and also, when you were mentioning that you were, at some point you had this in your mind, oh man, now I have to always speak my truth if I want to walk the talk, or I have to somehow always be perfect, up to standard, and always I can never fail in any moment. And it's just so rigid, right? And you're not allowing yourself to flow organically with what that moment demands. And instead you're just spilling out the demands of your mind and ego into a situation all the time, regardless of what that situation is, the people, the place, the time, the whatever. And I feel like sometimes, and that happens a lot in the spiritual scene, right? It happens a lot everywhere, but, we're kind of in these circles, so we talk about those circles. And, this idea that you have to live up to a certain expectation of yourself, that you're always love and light, or that you're always acting with integrity, and you're always aligned, and you're always in this, present moment, sacred, divine, whatever, God, goddess, and whatever you want to, choose. There's many to choose from. And that's the opposite of life, because life is impermanence, it's change. So it's bound to be different every single time, and it's meant to be so. And I used to be like that. I used to believe that I always had to be nice. Not kind. Kind is different, right? But nice. I always had to be nice. I always had to be calm and peaceful and sweet and caring. And that's bullshit. You're limiting your vast and rich spiritual human experience if you just decide to just act on one tiny part of yourself that may not even be authentic, right? Like that's so violent. That's so restrictive of yourself, right? And also very violent towards others if you're always, vomiting your own control issues over everybody else. I mean, that's also pretty intense, right? We're social beings, sorry, as part of our reality, right? But it's really, there's a time and a place. And sure, can be great to have principles and in a way, things to hold on to and ideas. And of course, in these things, they guide us, these values, and that's really great. But we also, as humans, we tend to like to stay comfortable with our worldview, and we don't like to question it. And we like to get along with people that have the same opinions, and we kind of really try to get really deeply rooted in the same shit so that it's comfortable and safe. And we always think that disagreeing has to be polarized and violent. And it does not. And you're just limiting yourself, right? And I say this fully aware that I get uncomfortable when I have to disagree, I get uncomfortable when there's a conflict. But it's, as cliche as it may sound, is absolutely necessary. And it's also beautiful, right? Because you're not limiting yourself, right? Yeah, we really have these restrictive ideas of how we should be as embodied, spiritual, but there's a teacher, Satu. She's amazing yoga somatics teacher, Satu, and she usually says being human is as spiritual as it gets.
There you go.
Full stop.
There you go.
With all of that, being human, what is that? With all the different meanings and realities that are encompassed in this word, is as spiritual as it gets.
What brings you joy these days?
What brings me joy these days? I love the autumn. I love the autumn, especially in Chiemgau, in this area of Germany. It's very beautiful. This brings me joy. My piano brings me a lot of joy. That was always something where I could always belong since a child. The music, especially in the piano. I always felt like home when I could really pour my heart into it, not when you're like playing an instrument from the mind and criticizing yourself as you're playing. It's different. But when you allow what is here to arise, I'm very guilty myself. Right, but yeah, my piano. Recently I've been able to sing again because I got pretty sick with whooping cough in June and I couldn't sing for a few months. And now it's coming back, and that brings me joy. So I would say autumn, just the colors and the slowing down, and also autumn for me now means tending even more to this space and this cocoon, and I feel very excited and privileged to do that. Right. And it also means that more people want to also come into such a cocoon, right? Because summer is different. Everyone is like freaking out. Yeah, this brings me joy at the moment. A cup of tea, yeah. And of course, cuddles with Toby.
Just waiting for that.
Yeah, part of my daily life, right? And yeah.
What was the hardest truth you had to learn during your journey of awakening?
I can safely say, very connected to what we just talked about, that being angry, doesn't mean you're a bad person, does not mean you're aggressive. Or like, to make this a bit more broad, maybe the hardest truth, something like, like connected to this not being fully yourself or wanting to please others, and that people pleasing is not necessarily kindness, that you're in a way trying to control the situation by making them nice to you. Do you know what I mean? Like, that was probably, I was so identified with, because I also have this side. I can be very gentle, very sweet, very loving and sensitive. This is very much part of my nature, and it's beautiful. I'm very blessed that I have easy access to that. But it's when it was really a lot of people pleasing and masking and not allowing myself to be myself, I had to let go of that attachment that I had to this identity of the peaceful, calm, chill, nice Maria, right? That was hard, because I had to come to terms with, wow, I'm not this person anymore. And that was probably the hardest thing, is to realize that even what I thought was nice was not coming from a place of kindness, not for myself, and maybe sometimes not even for other people. Because maybe this, I'm being nice to make everything okay. Maybe I'm not giving the person the space for them to own their truth in that moment. I'm just beating around the bush, you know what I mean? You're not going to the point. So that was probably the hardest truth that I had to still have to deal with, right? It's it's a learning curve, or multiple waves, spiral. Yeah, it's this owning all parts of myself and welcoming them, even the hardest ones to welcome. That's been,
beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you for this conversation.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed talking to you, and I am so excited to see where life's taking you in the future. I'm curious, I'm excited to see where our relationship is going to. I'm very grateful to have crossed paths with you. Also, something I wanted to just say is that I feel like you're living one of the most beautiful, at least from what I can judge, what I can see from the outside, you're living one of the most beautiful, authentic and honest relationships with your partner.
Thank you.
I feel like it's very, it's just very nice to be in your presence when you're together. And I sincerely wish you all the best, like for your journey together as well. I'm just standing on the sidelines and cheering for you.
Thank you.
Also wanted to share this with you.
Shout out to Toby.
Exactly.
Who also helped with
the setup.
Equipment and the setup situation. We had to give him credit.
Yeah, exactly. So thanks, Toby.
Thanks, Toby.
and just thanks for allowing me to do this. Yeah.
Thank you, Maxi. Thank you for inviting me and just diving into this with me. I feel my heart feels full. I feel just really grateful, and sometimes we need a reminder from the outside. So thank you for mirroring this back to me, how you perceive me and our conversation and my path and also my relationship. And it feels true in my heart. No matter how many times my mind tells me that it's something else, but it feels true in my heart. I hear you, and thank you for mirroring that. And I would say likewise, that I think it's part of the reason why we immediately felt so comfortable with each other, also with Toby, right? The three of us, is that there's no bullshit. And if there is, we can talk about it and laugh about it too. Not to have to take it too seriously, right? And it just feels very, very natural, very, very true. And I feel that you bring this into your work as well. And I definitely know that you bring this into this beautiful project you have with your podcast, because that's exactly what happened here today, right? That you were ready to embrace the unknown in the space that you're creating with me, and to just dive in with whatever came up, and you did. So, yeah, props to you as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I received that.
Yeah. I know you have time constraints, and me as well, but I could keep going for 5 more hours.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, we can at any time.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, would you like to close us off?
I'd love to. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I would absolutely love to.
Mm-hmm.
So I may have to move the microphone just a little bit to get cozy. So if you've been listening this whole time, you're great. And also, if you haven't, you're also great. And let's just take a comfortable seat, maybe just a little bit of unlocking the body again, and, shaking where it needs to be shook.
In the jaw.
Right? I think because I've been smiling so much in this conversation and nodding in agreement, but meant agreement that comes from the heart, right?
Exactly.
It's kind of locked, right?
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be taken care of. So, when you find a cozy, comfortable seat where you can arrive again. If you want, feel free to close your eyes, but not if you're driving. Not if you're driving. There's always a time and a place, right? There's always a context. So just allow your breath to flow a bit more freely. Perhaps a bit deeper than your usual breath. And just taking a moment to notice all that is part of your experience of this moment, of your real, visceral, lived, alive experience. What is happening here? All the impressions, all the thoughts you may be having, or lack of them. All the emotions or feelings or also the feeling of being alive and in this body at this moment in time, at this moment of your existence. Just taking a moment to tap into that as well. Good. And with all the thoughts, emotions, sensations, impressions, feelings, everything that is here with you, when you breathe in, I really want you to welcome it as it is, creating space for it. And whenever you exhale, just letting it be for now. Just give it permission. You don't have to shake it away, or it doesn't have to be more aligned or perfect or spiritual, whatever word you want to, use. It doesn't have to be any of that. It just has to be what is here. Good. And this is it. Just a reminder, friendly reminder that this is it. No matter how it feels, no matter what's going on, that this moment is everything. The eternal now, which is also always changing and from second to second, instant to instant. This is it. This is all we have. This is all we will ever have. And this conversation that you've been a witness to, that Maxi and I have journeyed through, it will only ever happen like this and never again. Not in the same way, not with the same emotions or thoughts or impressions or feelings or sensations. It's irreplaceable. And it will never happen again like it did. You will never be as you are in this moment of your life, as you are right now. And you will keep unfolding and becoming into so many other versions of yourself that you can't even dream of. And perhaps I can't quite find the words, but maybe you get a sense of what I'm trying to say, this unspeakable, unknown, and vastness of just being alive. So let's just take a few last breaths with that, just without any words. This is as spiritual as it gets. Thank you so much. This is as human as it gets.
Hey, beautiful listener, you have made it all the way through. And I want to take a moment to say thank you. And you can do me an enormous favor. It's all I'm going to ever ask from you. And that is to go to your podcast app right now. And if you enjoyed the episode, give the podcast a 5-star rating. If you want to write 1-2 words or sentences, even more powerful, even better. Thank you, already in advance. And also, while you're at it, just click on that follow button, on that bell notification, so that you never miss a new episode. All of that just contributes, and it helps me to increase the reach of the podcast. That means I can attract bigger guests, and that means I can deliver more powerful episodes. So it's a tiny thing. I'm only gonna ask this little favor of you ever, not more. 10-15 seconds of your time, a couple of clicks, that's it. Makes a huge difference for me as a creator. So thank you so much.